Michele Vig is an entrepreneur, but her story is a unique one. She spent 20 years in the corporate world and now is a professional home organizer. She's the founder of a company called Neat Little Nest, which helps people declutter and really spends time transforming their space, their time, and their mind. I want you to learn how being more organized and decluttered at home is going to bring you more joy and more happiness and less stress. And actually, you guys, believe me, it works because I've done it myself. Anyways, can't wait for you guys to hear the conversation with Michele Vig. Hi, Michele.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you on my show.
I am happy to be here and not working together in a different way.
In a different way. So full disclosure, you have organized my house.
Yes.
You are the founder of Neat Little Nest.
Yep.
And you came from a career that wasn't a typical path of just waking up to be a home organizer. So I kind of want to start with your story first because I'm fascinated by your career path and what you did.
Yeah.
How did you go to finding and founding the company Neat Little Nest? What did you do before that?
So I worked in corporate America for 20 years doing mostly executive marketing, product development roles.
Okay.
And I was blessed with an incredible career of advancement. And so my job right before I started Neat Little Nest, I was the president of Caribou Coffee. The impetus for me starting Neat Little Nest was I was laid off in 2017. And that layoff was the most shocking and the most deeply helpful thing that's ever happened in my life. Because there was a small piece in my heart that wasn't on the right path, and I knew it. So when I was laid off, it was this grieving process,
Trauma.
But then this, wait a second, you have an opportunity in the back half of your life to rewrite the script. So I went home and I talked to my husband and I said, I don't think I'm going to go back to go get a big job. And everybody
Was like, you're crazy.
Everybody said I was crazy, except for Dan. That's my husband. Because he saw the last 20 years, you know?
The stress, the pressure, the treadmill.
The constant
grinding.
I was blessed because in 2015, we went on an executive retreat at Caribou and we dug deep and we sat there and we were asked to look inside and find out what it is that made us tick. Now they were doing this as a executive development.
Yeah.
You know, they took us to a beautiful resort and I spent a lot of time thinking and I said to my buddy, Matt, who was chief strategy officer, at the time I was chief marketing officer, I said, I think I want to organize stuff.
You did?
Yeah. He's like, Viggy, you can't do that. You're the chief marketing officer. I said, I know, but I really, when I answered all those questions, I really like to organize stuff and I really want to help people in a different way. He's like, okay, well, you can't do that. So why don't you just start a blog? So I did.
That's what you did?
Yeah. So in 2014, I started a blog called Neat Little Nest. And he's like, just write stuff that you like, you know, just do that.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah. Think small, act small. Yeah.
So I did that. And I didn't have time for that. So I did some of that, but I kind of let that sit. I had an executive coach help me transition out. So she said, okay, well, here's a book. Why don't you read this book? It's called Working Identity. It's pretty old. It's an excellent book. It's written by a Harvard professor, I believe. And she tells you to craft experiments. That's the advice. So it's not the corporate advice. Go do a big, huge
business plan
and go get financing. No, it says just do an experiment. Because I was living this whole life. This is totally different.
Yeah, completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's do it. I looked up some stuff on the internet. It just so happened Marie Kondo was just starting to train people. It just so happened it was in Chicago, within miles of where my in-laws lived. It was in a month and a half. I mean,
everything came together. Serendipity happened.
Yeah, just a little serendipity. Oh, and if you believe in God, it was, there was some divine intervention. So I signed up and was accepted to do this Marie Kondo workshop for 3 days and work under her. That was my first experiment to see if it was something that I actually liked.
Okay, so you came and did my home, and it's daunting. Like, you take out all your stuff. Like, I've seen a lot of the before and afters on your page.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
For us, it's not. It's really fun because, so when I see a picture of a cluttered space, and I think it's why I was good in business. So when I saw a challenge in business, my mind could picture how to fix it. I used to be called that at work, a fixer. A fixer. So the projects I was put on from the time I was 20 until, it was, there's a mess over here, a business mess. Like, we can't figure it out. Can you just get in there, move fast, get in there, come up with ideas, and just start to do stuff. And that's what I did my whole career. I was always thrown into those type of projects, the ones that no one wanted, a little messy. They needed to be turned around quickly. When I started at Caribou, a year after I started, the bottom of the world fell out, 2008. And then we got a new CEO. And when I came back in, he was like, we might have to shut the company down. We need you to do things real fast, fix it. Same thing in people's homes. So when I see the space, I don't see the mess. I see the end. I can just see it like instantly. When someone sends me pictures, I'm not judging what's happening. I'm seeing the
problem that you need to solve.
And not even, I hate to even call it a problem. I can see their hurt. I can see where it's getting in the way.
Yep.
I say hurt just because I just came from a consult with a man who lost his wife 6 months ago, and he has 2 10-year-old daughters. And I can feel that when I'm there. I know that I can help him, and I can help him because he's in such a transition in his life. And the first thing to go in stressful times is keeping your space tidy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love how you told the story about you weren't going to boil the ocean. You were just going to try to do one experiment and give it a go and get success and a win under your belt. And then you got the assignment to do 500 hours. You ended up doing your neighbors. So you did the 500 hours and you did your neighbors. Then what?
Well, my friends tell me this. I don't see this because you don't see yourself in the same way. I did the 500 hours very quickly. And then I didn't realize this, I became the first person in Minnesota certified in Marie Kondo.
Oh, wow.
I was certified within like a few weeks. It just didn't take that long because I was just having so much fun.
You knew it was your passion, your calling, and you wanted to do it.
Yeah. I thought from my history of marketing and product development, that's a hook. So I pitched the media. I didn't have a 50-point plan. I just said, I'm the first person in Minnesota with this thing. And because the media I'd been talking with the media before about my work. They were interested in my personal story of what are you doing?
What are you doing now? You went from a corporate executive to a home organizer.
Like, why are you doing it?
Why are you doing that?
And so it ended up being they were really interested in the article. It ended up being on the front page of the home section of the Strip. And I don't know that you know this.
That's how my sister found you.
And she became one of my very first clients that wasn't my neighbor.
Really?
Yeah.
So how I met Michele is she organized my sister's home. And I saw everything has a spot. Everything is organized. There's no junk drawers. It's easy to maintain. Everything's labeled. It's aesthetically beautiful. Everything has a purpose. It creates no stress at home. And so when I moved here, and I closed on my house. I think it was like July 15th. July 16th, Michele was in here. I'm like, here's all my boxes from Dubai. Here's all my furniture. You put it together for the first time, the right time. And I've been living here now 2 years. It's exactly the way you left it. I can proudly say you have to go inspect, but it's made my life easy.
Yeah.
Because I know where everything is. I know where everything belongs. You know, I want to tell a little bit about how we work together because I think it's interesting. And I did film when you did come over and you set up like a table and you put all these container store stuff. It looked like a store in my home. And like, I'm like, how is this going to end up looking the right way? But your methodology was focused on me, my lifestyle. Do you drink coffee? Do you drink tea? My skincare and my hair care, like all the things in my bathroom is evolved around my morning routine, like how I do things. So like everything's the right way. Like, do I sit down and do my makeup or do I stand up and do my hair? Like, then we need to make sure that the plugs of the hair stuff is next to where you're going to be doing your hair. So all of the detail, I never thought of it. I never thought that any of that stuff mattered. I just thought that clothes had to be folded and put in a drawer. So you've created this system and you do this now. I want to ask, were you always neat and tidy at home? Was there a messy Michele in your being before this?
So I grew up in a messy home. And so yeah, I had a messy room and I grew up in a messy home. Not a dirty home, not a hoarder home, but we didn't have systems in our home. So a lot of stress was put on my mom to try to, to be the one to do that. And it turns out that it's not her strength to create organizing systems. So I can distinctly remember times when I was a teenager where I'd clean my room. You'd either be forced to or you'd do it and you had a different feeling in your body, yeah. Right? You felt different. So when I left home, I was no longer messy. It's not that I'm perfect, but I knew that when I left my home, and I loved my parents and I loved living there, but I knew that when I left my homes that I was going to create for myself were going to be different.
There's also an emotional attachment to clutter, right? Like we like to hold on to things, not just hoarding, but like it's easier just to shove it in a drawer than to go through and figure out, well, why am I even keeping this piece of paper? And so the decluttering part is to simplify your life so that you don't need to worry about the objects or papers or whatever it is it's just adding stress to your life. Like the reason why Steve Jobs used to wear the same things, so you have to think about what to wear, like decluttering their brain and their spaces. Yeah. Why is it so hard for us to organize and to clean up after ourselves? Like, why is it hard for us to get in that habit? Is it something we weren't taught?
I think there's two things that show up for me, especially in America. We buy too much, for sure, in America. We consume the most of any, place in the world. And so because of that, we have a relationship with things that, because we can buy so much stuff, we do buy so much stuff. But there is a physiological brain connection to stuff. There are studies that have been done that have given at a sporting event that people are given a free koozie. In that short amount of time where there's that game, they're attached. Mm-hmm. They don't want to give it back because it's theirs. So part of it, the reason why decluttering is difficult is you do create an attachment so quickly, but it isn't until you realize that you're not your things and your things are not you that you can start to focus your mind, which is why they're connected, on what you actually want in your life. But same for me when I left corporate. I'd been asked a question of what kind of a job do you want for 20 years? And that's the question I was answering. But when I shifted the question when I was laid off to what kind of life do you want to live? Then I begin to envision the life I want to live. It becomes a lot clearer what I need to do. Same thing with clutter. When you ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to live? And that life includes work and home. Usually when you're sitting down to think of that life or you're envisioning it in your mind, you're not envisioning a cluttered space. You're not envisioning yourself stressed out. And it's by that envisioning as a starting point that you can then begin to ask yourself what you want to keep in your space and in your life that goes to that vision.
What do you advise for someone who wants to get started at it's new year. I want to clean out my junk. I want to declutter. I want to live more organized. I want to be less attached to things.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
I always say to start with the decluttering of your your stuff clutter first. One thing people can do immediately, if this is helpful, there's always a free decluttering checklist on my website. It is set up in the categories of decluttering that Marie Kondo teaches. Decluttering category by category, as you know, is easier on your brain.
Yep.
So when you start to declutter, if someone wanted to do it today, they could pick one simple category. It could be their t-shirts in their closet. But by starting with your stuff, you are able to make decisions on what you want to keep. I think that's probably the shift in mindset that's helpful for a lot of my clients is we don't really focus on what you're letting go of. We're really focusing on what you want to keep. And it's easier for people to pick what they love than to feel like they have to get rid of stuff. But I will say without envisioning what kind of life they want first, it's harder to make those decisions on what you want to keep.
Yeah. So we're just talking out of my personal experience and using t-shirts as an example. We go to the drawer and we take all my t-shirts out and which ones do I actually wear?
Yep.
Which ones do I love? And which ones do I never wear or don't have any sentimental value? So we get rid of them by donating them to somebody in need, correct? That's a little bit about the process, correct? Yep. So in looking at, obviously, do you have a policy of if you buy something new, you have to get something out of your closet? How do you, let's say we do it, we've decluttered my home.
Yep.
We set it up for success. And so what should I be doing? When I bring something new in, am I supposed to be getting rid of something? Or is it just, I do it once a month or annually or?
It kind of depends. There's no one size fits all answer, but I would say yes to the things you're saying. So, for parents who have young children, I recommend really considering a quarterly review.
Okay.
Because they're growing out of clothes that quickly. Toys might, things, birthdays, Christmas, other holidays happen where they're getting stuff that quarterly seems about right. It depends on what your loves are. So some of my clients are very fashion forward and they really like to, have a wardrobe that's current. If that's the case, then I would say quarterly or half yearly reviews of their clothes. But if you're not someone who that's really a kind of a thing, it might be annually a review of your clothes and your accessories. So it really does depend on the situation itself. But for myself personally, for our family, it's the size of the space that dictates. So I know for me, because my office is also my closet, I do kind of live by the one in, one out rule. My kids, similarly, but if you have a smaller space, a New York apartment, a studio, that does require, a little more intentional review. And it might even be, as you're going throughout each month. But the larger the space, it might be less often because you have some more storage spaces to hold some things.
So this Netflix show that Marie Kondo did put it in the homes of everyone, where everyone started thinking about, does this bring me joy? And what do we know about organizing? And the Container Store is obviously on fire. And then there was a home edit show and all these shows on television now bringing awareness to beautifully organized homes. And so it's very popular, this industry now. But you were the first in Minnesota, and you're one of the first, but now you don't just have a passion. This is a company. You have a business.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go from having the idea that you want to organize people's homes? It's very different than having to do invoicing and order and customer contract. Like now it's a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that like? And how do you pick your team members and your staff? I want to get into the entrepreneur hat first now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was incredibly blessed to have so much responsibility in corporate. So for me, the business side of a neat little nest, invoicing, writing contracts, organizing my time, organizing the way that I manage clients. You know, you've seen me. This is my Maha file.
Yep.
That for me it came natural. So it was probably the easiest part, you know, figuring out how to work in people's homes was not something that I had done. So that for me was actually a little more nuanced and new and unfamiliar than the business side of it. The handling of contracts, money, lawyers, that stuff was easy for me. It was the other side that was a passion of mine, but you're working with people and clients and trying to help them out. So,
and going into their homes
and going into their most intimate spaces, you know, it's, I joke, you know, what happens in organizing stays in organizing, just like Vegas, because there's a lot of trust that has to be had between a professional organizer and their clients because as you know, asking tons of questions. And I think that naturally that's just the way my curious mind was made. So in order for me to solve a problem, I just will ask questions. And that's really the entrepreneurship side of just solving clients' problems.
One of the most daunting things for me was papers. Like organizing, I keep like all these papers, which I don't need to keep, but like I just keep them and then I store them and then they become too much. So I had you come over and do my office because I have some beautiful books, but then I had a lot of paper from Dubai and paper from Egypt and paper from my childhood. What's the approach to paper?
So I think one of the challenges is that mentally we believe it should take us an hour. We think it should just take us a real quick hour to do our papers. And most of my clients, it is not a real quick hour. It is 6 and 7 hours. I had a client where we worked on papers for 19 hours.
So just on my process is I just gave you all my stuff. I left you alone and I trusted you're going to go through all of my papers.
Yep.
And you started sorting them in categories of like, this is sentimental. Looks like a letter from your dad. This is a legal paper for your company. This is related to your book. So you started organizing it for me and you sorted it. And then I came in and looked at decisions about, that we can get rid of, this we should keep. And then you gave me a system. You're like, you need a filing cabinet. We need to purchase you a filing cabinet. I'm going to put them in folders. I'm going to label the folders. And these are the ones you're going to keep.
My mind, especially with papers, is about efficiency rather than organizing. So it's a strategic organizing system. A lot of organizers have lots of files. You know that when we work together, I am really asking, are we sure? And I don't want there to be 400 categories. Yeah. I want there to be less. And you also might have noticed, I don't know if we talked about it, I also straight file.
What does that mean?
A straight file is what I did in your office, which means all the labels are straight down the center. It's very difficult for our brains to quickly be able to read left and right and middle. So all my clients is straight filed, and it's a lot easier because you just sit, you look, and you organize.
And it's done.
Yeah.
Last thing, and we'll let you go. You said that when you first decided to do this, you did PR. You did a story in the news. That was the first marketing thing you did.
Yeah.
Was you wanted a newspaper or an organization to write about what you did.
Yes.
And that changed the trajectory of your career.
Yes.
that's what I do. I do communications and PR. And we often say that in most of the histories of like the biggest startups, Dry Bar, Warby Parker, Five Guys, what changed in their business journey was a story came out about them, which brought awareness to how their business existed or what they did. And that's how my sister found you. And that's how I find you. And now my friends, I recommended you to some of my friends for you to do their homes, and you've flown to do their homes, and they're loving every minute of it. I'm going to see them actually next weekend. But why did you think that PR was the first thing you should do, and using your client as a testimonial as part of your marketing strategy?
So, okay. When I was crafting these experiments, one of my life choices was to not live my life like I did before. I didn't want to be so strivey, and so I refused to create a marketing plan. I wanted everything to be a fun experiment that was anti the old me. So I found a person who was a PR, my person who helped me with PR, and my experiment, it was literally anti-corporate, everything anti-corporate. No, I'm not spending money on a big, huge PR campaign. So I traded. I said, what if I did your house and you did my PR? Because at this point, I wasn't even really sure this was going to be what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I was still crafting experiments. So when I helped the person who helped me with my PR do her home, because I said to her, the only person who can help me do my PR is someone who understands what I do, because I'm different than everyone else. And so we just had this deal. And from there, the rest was history. The article in the Strib was one of them. The second was an article in the Minneapolis St. Paul magazine. The article in the Minneapolis St. Paul magazine was read by a guy who was traveling through Minneapolis airport, who then called me and said, Michele, I know this is weird. I saw you in this article. Have you ever thought to write a book? I literally said, this is weird timing. I have a book on my heart. I explained the concept. I wrote a book 6 months later.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it was all PR. It was all the launch pad to see if this was going to work.
Well, it did.
And it did.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you for decluttering my home, for transforming my life, and for helping me. I continue to follow you. I saw how you organized putting the Christmas decorations away, having a system for every occasion, because we have to live.
Yes.
So we just need to do it in a neat way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michele.
Thank you.
Thank you.